In this podcast episode, Dr. Benjamin Bikman, a leading metabolic and fat cell scientist, dives deep into the complex and often misunderstood world of weight loss, metabolism, and hormonal regulation, particularly focusing on insulin's pivotal role. He challenges the traditional calorie-centric weight loss narrative, advocating instead for strategies that prioritize insulin management, ketogenic diets, and the therapeutic potential of ketones. The conversation also explores related topics like continuous glucose monitors, exogenous ketones, gender differences in metabolism, the impact of supplements like creatine and collagen, and the future of metabolic health technologies. Dr. Bikman shares practical advice for sustainable health changes in 2026, while addressing cautionary tales and the controversies surrounding diet and disease. Dr. Bikman begins by emphasizing insulin's unmatched importance in metabolism, describing it as the hormone that rules them all. Insulin signals every individual cell, whether brain, liver, muscle, or fat, on how to handle energy. When insulin levels are high, the body is essentially programmed to store calories, particularly as fat in adipose tissue or the liver, thereby driving weight gain and insulin resistance. Unlike the prevailing focus on simply calorie reduction, Bikman stresses that without controlling insulin, particularly hyperinsulinemia caused by high carbohydrate intake, weight loss efforts face major hurdles. He highlights that insulin spikes decrease circulating energy by swiftly storing it and also suppress ketone production, denying the brain and body their preferred steady fuel source. Bikman critiques the calorie-centric model of obesity that dominates public health advice. Eat less, move more. He explains that purely cutting calories often leads to hunger and metabolic adaptation, making long-term maintenance difficult. Using examples from clinical studies and observations from shows like The Biggest Loser, he illustrates how calorie restriction alone frequently results in temporary weight loss followed by rapid regain due to escalating hunger and slowed metabolism. Importantly, he points out that the size of fat cells matters more than their number. Shrinking fat cells improves health, whereas simply removing fat cells, e.g. liposuction, does not improve metabolic markers like diabetes. Thus, success lies in reducing insulin levels, which facilitates fat cell shrinkage without triggering relentless hunger. While acknowledging multiple paths to weight loss, Bikman advocates the ketogenic diet as one of the simplest and most practical ways to reduce insulin and burn fat. By cutting carbohydrates, insulin levels drop, enabling the body to release stored fat and produce ketones, a vital alternative fuel source for the brain and heart. He explains the physiology of ketogenesis. Low insulin prompts fat cells to break down triglycerides into free fatty acids, which the liver then converts into ketones. This metabolic state not only promotes fat burning, but also stabilizes blood glucose, reduces hunger, and enhances mental clarity. Bikman stresses that ketones are more than fuel. They act as signaling molecules that improve mood, cognition, and even cardiovascular function by dilating blood vessels and improving ejection fraction. Dr. Bikman elaborates on ketones, particularly beta-hydroxybutyrate, BHB, the primary ketone body produced by the liver during fat metabolism. Ketones serve as efficient fuel for all cells with mitochondria and bypass insulin's regulatory gatekeeper that glucose typically requires, providing a steady energy source, especially for organs like the brain and heart. He also discusses exogenous ketones, supplements that rapidly increase blood ketone levels without dietary carb restriction. These come in various forms, such as ketone esters, salts, and precursors like 1,3-butanediol. Bikman notes their potential to support ketosis during dietary transitions, aid cognitive function, and even improve blood pressure, citing his personal anecdote of reduced blood pressure after consuming an LBHB ketone ester. Continuous ketone monitoring devices are also highlighted as emerging tools enabling real-time tracking of ketosis. The conversation delves into how hormonal fluctuations affect women's responses to ketogenic diets. Bikman explains that women experience dynamic changes in estrogen and progesterone throughout their menstrual cycle, which influence fat metabolism and hunger. During the follicular phase, women accelerate fat burning and reach ketosis faster than men due to elevated estrogen and free fatty acids. Conversely, in the luteal phase, higher progesterone acts as a hunger hormone, making fasting or carb restriction more challenging. Bikman references clinical studies showing that ketogenic diets do not uniquely elevate stress hormone cortisol in women, challenging common assumptions that keto is inherently more stressful for females and suggesting that individualized approaches based on hormonal cycles may be warranted. Dr. Bikman shares his personal daily routine aimed at maintaining low insulin and metabolic health. He recommends no or very limited carbohydrates for breakfast and lunch to avoid compounding the natural morning insulin resistance caused by cortisol rhythms. Instead, meals should emphasize ample protein and fats, which minimally impact insulin. Bikman personally fasts through breakfast, drinks yerba mate tea for mild appetite control and focus, and performs fasted morning resistance training. Lunch is the largest meal, ideally packed with protein and fat to blunt evening carb cravings. Dinner, reserved for social and family eating, may include carbohydrates, with emphasis on not eating late to avoid nocturnal hypoglycemia, which disrupts parasympathetic nervous system activity and sleep quality. This pattern helps sustain stable insulin, promote fat burning, and limit hunger. Supporting the ketogenic diet, Bikman advocates incorporating exogenous ketones to ease transitions into ketosis and potentially preserve lean muscle during weight loss, referencing recent research from his lab. Beyond ketones, he highlights supplements like omega-3 fatty acids for muscle synthesis, collagen peptides for skin and metabolic support, creatine for both muscle and brain energy enhancement, and adaptogens such as ashwagandha for reducing stress and improving sleep. The evidence showing creatine's cognitive benefits is underscored, especially for aging and sleep-deprived individuals, with calls for more women and vegetarians to consider supplementation due to typically lower dietary intake. The discussion turns to glucagon-like peptide 1, GLP-1, receptor agonists, popular weight loss drugs that suppress appetite by signaling satiety to the brain and slowing gastric emptying. Bikman acknowledges their effectiveness in reducing carbohydrate cravings and promoting weight loss, but warns that the effect wanes over time as the body's receptors become desensitized, diminishing benefits and resulting in common discontinuation after about 2 years. He cautions that GLP-1 drugs often induce loss of fat-free mass, along with fat, which can pose risks for long-term health, especially in older adults. Bikman recommends a strategic, cyclic, and low-dose use of these drugs paired with behavioral counseling focused on sustainable low-carb habits to maintain gains and reduce dependency. Encouraging data-driven personal health management, Bikman supports use of continuous glucose monitors, CGMs, explaining how real-time feedback helps individuals track their blood sugar responses to food and lifestyle choices. CGMs empower users to identify dietary patterns that provoke glucose spikes and adjust accordingly. When combined, stacked with other wearable tech like heart rate variability trackers, CGMs can provide insights into the interplay of stress, sleep, and metabolism. Dr. Bikman also celebrates the growing availability of continuous ketone monitors, which he describes as a revolutionary tool for optimally maintaining ketogenic states and metabolic health. The podcast addresses a cautionary case involving an insulinoma, a rare pancreatic tumor that overproduces insulin. In such patients, ketogenic diets or carb restriction may be dangerous, causing severe hypoglycemia as insulin levels remain pathologically elevated regardless of intake. This example illustrates the necessity of individualized medical assessment prior to making drastic diet changes. The conversation then touches on the broader field of cancer metabolism, highlighting research positioning cancer as fundamentally a metabolic disease driven by glucose addiction, the Warburg effect. The work of Dr. Thomas Seyfried is noted, who proposes that targeting cancer's metabolic vulnerabilities via ketogenic strategies combined with conventional treatments could yield better outcomes. Dr. Bikman and the host discuss the challenges of breaking entrenched dietary dogmas about calories, carbs, and fat within the scientific and media landscape. Bikman laments how disruptive ideas, especially those promoting low-carb or ketogenic approaches, face skepticism or dismissal despite growing supporting evidence. He advocates for a scientific mindset that embraces uncertainty and humility, allowing for constant refinement of theories rather than rigid adherence to fixed paradigms. The conversation highlights the importance of transparently providing context, references, and balanced discussion to enable informed decision-making, drawing from experience, confronting misrepresentation in mainstream outlets. Stress and poor sleep emerge as critical factors exacerbating insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction in the podcast. Bikman describes stress-induced fast insulin resistance that can develop within hours, primarily driven by sleep deprivation's impact on cortisol and glucose regulation. He explains how chronic poor sleep elevates insulin resistance, increases cravings, and promotes fat storage. Strategies such as removing evening alcohol intake, utilizing adaptogens like ashwagandha, maintaining stable evening blood sugar, and improving sleep hygiene are presented as foundational for breaking this vicious cycle. Ketones are characterized as anxiolytic agents that reduce stress signaling pathways in the brain, further supporting their therapeutic promise. Bikman notes that middle-aged men experiencing fatigue, weight gain, or metabolic challenges should evaluate their testosterone levels, as hormonal declines contribute to decreased muscle mass and worsening metabolic health, sometimes termed andropause. Weight loss can naturally boost testosterone, but for persistent deficiencies, lifestyle changes and supplements may be beneficial before considering replacement therapy. Anecdotal evidence is shared regarding cold exposure, ice baths, combined with resistance training as a natural testosterone booster, emphasizing the role of integrated lifestyle interventions. An intriguing discussion emerges about the possible unintended consequences of excess vitamin intake, especially B vitamins, on metabolic efficiency. Bikman explains that high doses of B vitamins can potentially increase the efficiency of energy production in cells, effectively making metabolism too efficient and promoting fat storage rather than fat burning. Drawing from animal studies and agricultural parallels, he suggests that widespread nutritional fortification and high-dose supplementation could be contributing factors in the obesity epidemic by enabling bodies to store more fat per calorie consumed. This concept challenges the common perception that more vitamins equals better metabolism. Throughout the podcast, controlling carbohydrate addiction is emphasized as central to sustainable weight loss and metabolic health. Dr. Bikman points out that carbs, especially refined sugars and starches, drive relentless insulin secretion, hunger, and fat storage. He advises structuring indulgences mindfully, limiting their frequency, and seeking social accountability to avoid uncontrolled binge patterns. GLP-1 medications and low-carb education form part of a combined approach to reduce cravings. He also recounts personal experiences and scientific evidence showing how ketogenic diets and ketones help diminish the addictive pull of sugar by stabilizing brain energy supply and reducing neurotransmitter fluctuations, enabling effortless resistance to formerly enticing sweets. In closing, Dr. Bikman and the host reflect on the deeper motivations necessary to sustain life-changing health improvements beyond personal vanity or fleeting goals. Using the example of a middle-aged parent determined to be a healthier role model for their children, Bikman encourages finding external reasons to strengthen commitment and resilience in challenging times. He stresses that large transformative changes typically begin with small, manageable steps, like cutting alcohol or eating a bigger protein-rich lunch, which then ripple outward to improve sleep, stress, and cravings. Ultimately, he underscores that real change arises from consistent habits aligned with clear purpose and community support.